Hello, chess fans. Welcome to another edition of Chess Chat, a program designed to give you, the viewer, a better understanding and a deeper appreciation of the exciting world of chess. I am your host, George Merijanian, Program Director of the Wachusett Chess Club at Fitchburg State University. This club meets every Wednesday evening from 7 to 11 in room C-159 of the McKay Campus School at the university. And once again, with me is my trusty co-host and longtime colleague, Martin Lane of Lunenburg, one of the strongest and most active chess players in north central Massachusetts. Welcome, Marty.
Hello, George. Good to see you again.
Always a pleasure seeing you, Marty. Well, Marty, the American chess community is mourning the passing of one of this country's top players of the 20th century, International Grandmaster Larry Evans. He died 3 weeks ago. It was actually on November 15th, 2010, in Reno, Nevada. Now, what do you know about Grandmaster Larry Evans?
Well, Larry Evans, for me, and I think my experience would have been similar to a lot of people. In many ways, this is a picture of him discussing a game
in front of a demonstration board
at a major tournament,
right?
Which was a familiar role for him. He was a teacher, a chess writer, a chess
very
instructor.
Prolific writer.
Yeah. And in fact, his books were really responsible for a lot of the early learning that I did when I first started taking chess seriously. A number of his early books were for beginners. I'm trying to think. There were books like.
You mentioned
White to Play and Win. I think.
Yes, he wrote
that was a beginner's book about openings, what openings to use, and things like that. And I have books like New Ideas in Chess and Chess Catechism that discuss positions and sort of introduce you to how to look at the chessboard.
Now, do you have modern chess openings?
Yes, and he was the editor. That's like they used to be called the Chess Player's Bible.
Yes, the chess players consider that their Bible, because it was a reference book of openings and defenses. He edited the 10th edition. Now, I think they're up to what, 14 or 15 edition.
At least, yeah.
But, you know, Larry Evans, he was born in 1932, March 22nd, 1932 in New York City. And he learned the game of chess from his brothers. But he really didn't take the game seriously until he was in his early teens. And when he was, I think it was 13, that's when he started to get involved with the chess club in New York City, Marshall Chess Club. He became he won the championship at the club, you know, I think it was 15, won the New York State Championship at the age of 16. And then, let's see, that was in 1948. 1948, he tied for the U.S. Junior Championship with Grandmaster Arthur Biscayr. We've done a show on Arthur Biscayr. He lives in Wellesley, Massachusetts now. So these were some of the up-and-coming players. After World War II, we had a crop of very talented youngsters.
Right, the Americans were very strong.
Very strong after World War II. Larry Evans was really a top player back in the 50s, the 60s, right into the 70s. He won the U.S. Championship 5 times.
He played in a number of Olympiads.
8 Olympiads. We've talked about Olympiads.
Probably more than any other American
Absolutely.
player.
From 1950 until 1976, he was in the Olympiads. He also won the U.S. Open Championship 4 times. In 1951 was actually when he won both the U.S. Open and the U.S. Closed, the U.S. Championship. So that was a banner year for him. But he was not only a player, but he was a writer, a chess writer, and a very good writer. And you know, after, you know, I don't know, I'm sure Darren Dame has a photo of Larry Evans in a swimming pool with Bobby Fischer.
Now preparing for the World Championship.
Now this photo was taken in 1972 in upstate New York at Grossinger's Resort.
Because that's where Bobby Fischer was getting ready for his World Championship match.
And Larry Evans was coaching him. He was the trainer. Yeah. And also what Larry Evans did, Fischer in the late 60s was working on a book called My 60 Memorable Games.
Now a chess classic.
It is a classic. If anybody gets their hands on that book by Fischer, in fact, if you go to eBay, it's in the hundreds of, you can get it for hundreds of dollars. But what I'm going to say about that book, if it were not for Larry Evans, I don't think Fischer would have ever had that book published, because Fischer procrastinated. He put together, he selected 60 of his best games, annotated the games, but it was Larry Evans. actually, Larry Evans did the introduction of every single game, also rewrote Fischer's annotations into understandable English.
Yeah. Fischer was a good annotator, but not such a good writer.
Not a good writer. But Larry Evans contributed a lot to Fischer's success, you know, both, you know.
But they had a falling out soon, before the championship.
Because, you know, when Bobby Fischer went to Reykjavik, Iceland, 1972, to play Boris Spassky, Larry Evans didn't go along with him.
Right, he didn't take his coach with him.
That's right. That was his coach, his trainer.
Right.
So Larry, you know, and, you know, actually after Fischer won the championship, World Championship in 1992, the following year, Larry Evans started doing a syndicated chess column, and it has appeared in numerous newspapers around the country. So he's both a player and a writer and a teacher,
coach,
as you say.
Teacher,
coach.
coach.
I mean, he's really a very versatile player, and really the players in the United States are really mourning his passing because he was one of our shining stars, you know, on the local.
Long-time columnist in Chess Life.
Oh, absolutely, yes. In fact, he used to write a column, a regular column, monthly column called Evans on Chess. People would write in questions. Now, here's a picture. You know what the person on the left? That's Ray Charles. The late great musician Ray Charles. He was friends with Larry Evans, and we did a program on Ray Charles. And he played. They played a friendly match. So, and also this is Bill Cosby on the right. He was friends with Bill Cosby because Bill Cosby, who was a UMass graduate, was an avid chess player. So Larry Evans knew them all. He knew all the celebrities. You know, after he moved to Reno, Nevada, it was in the late '60s. He got to know all these entertainers and people in entertainment. And he also found out he had another talent. He was very good at the game of blackjack. Because he had such a phenomenal memory. He could remember the cards that were played.
He became a card counter.
And, you know, because of that, they used to ban him from the casinos.
He was banned from the casinos, right.
Yeah, so he was making money initially, but after they banned him from the casino, that ended his blackjack playing in casinos. Well, today, Marty, we're going to present one of Larry Evans' game from it's actually the 1958 U.S. Championship, which started in December 1958, but went over into January 1959. And this game is against Grandmaster Arthur Biscayr, again, who lives in Wellesley, Massachusetts. And this was a very...
this is a picture of...
this is Arthur Biscayr in the red shirt. He's leaning over, talking to our current Massachusetts state champion, Alexander Ivanov. But Arthur Biscayr, he's got to be now, what, 81? He's still active. He's the most active of that crop of players, you know, who grew up after World War II. So we're going to present this game in which Larry Evans is white, and let's start the game. What did Larry Evans play as his first move?
All right, so he moved the pawn from e2 to e4. Again, the most common and one of the best opening moves in chess. Opens diagonals for the white squared bishop, opens a diagonal for the queen, occupies the central square. It's probably the most common move on the board.
Yes, and every serious chess player should learn this opening. All right, so what Biscayr did in reply, he played e5. E5. His pawn on e7, he plays the e5.
And then
so now
Evans chooses to develop his knight on g1 to f3. It develops the knight. It attacks some central squares, including the e5 pawn. All
right, so he plays knight f3, attacks the pawn on e5. So now, black has choices here. The normal reply here for black is to defend that pawn under attack. But what Biscayr did, he played the knight on g8 to f6.
And now that goes by the name of Petrov's defense.
Yes, this is a counterattack.
It's a counterattack.
It's not it's known as the Petrov's defense,
but it's really a counterattack.
It's an attack. It's a counterattacking system.
Though in other countries they call it the Russian defense.
Yes, in English-speaking countries we know it as the Petrov's defense after the Russian master, 19th century Russian master Alexander Petrov. But most of the people in the world who play chess know this is the Russian defense. And this is a very good defense to play, the Russian defense. All right, so what does one do against the Russian defense?
Well, White has a couple of options. One common response is to play the d2 pawn to d4, mounting another attack on the e5 square.
And you know who favored that move? Who was the opinion that was the only move that you should play against this Russian defense? Was Wilhelm Steinitz, who was the first official world champion. He says that is the only move that you can play against this Russian defense. But of course,
But there are others.
There are other moves, yes. So what else is possible?
White could play very conservatively and just simply play knight, develop the other knight to c3, and it becomes kind of a 3-knights game, maybe a 4-knights game.
But you know what? Now it's actually white who's defending.
Right.
Why should be white defending?
It gives up the initiative.
Right, okay.
Right. So the other thing is to carry on with the attack. Knight takes, and this is what Evans did, the knight on f3, takes the pawn on e5.
Right, okay. So now what does black do? What did Biscard do? Well, Biscard did not take the pawn on e4.
Right.
Because maybe let's show our viewers what would happen.
Classic old trap.
This is a trap. This is an opening trap. This is a bad move to play. Let's play knight takes e4. And now the strongest move for white now is this.
The queen goes on to e2, attacking the knight.
Right. And now the knight either has, well, it's under attack. It either has to be defended or has to retreat.
Right.
If we defend it with d5, we're going to, it's going to come under attack.
We're going to
d3.
attack it again with
exactly.
d3.
And once it moves, it moves it back.
Then there's a discovered check to c6, which attacks the queen, basically wins the queen. There's no way to save that queen.
And the same thing would happen if
he had simply moved the knight.
Exactly.
Back.
If he
if he hadn't done that.
Right. Let's say, for example, instead of defending, let's say, for example, after queen e2, he retreats immediately.
Yeah, the same trap.
The same thing trap.
Right.
The knight to c6, discovered check wins the queen.
Right. Even though it's a classic, it still happens sometimes.
So you'll find beginners who will fall into this trap. So this is why it's not advisable. So let's put this back. All right. So before black can take that pawn, he has to play d6.
Right.
Okay, so now the knight
and the knight only has two possible squares. It could come to c4, but that blocks the bishop, and it doesn't really do anything. Really, the best thing is for the knight simply to come back to f3.
Okay, now it's safe for black to take the pawn on e4. So knight takes e4 is Biscard's fourth move. Right. Okay, so now
the most natural thing for white here would simply be to play d4, attack, get a pawn in the center, attack two central squares, open up the diagonal for the bishop. Instead, Evans chooses kind of a little known move. He plays the pawn on c2 to c4.
Yes, and this is rather unusual. As you say, the d4 is the most logical, more normal move. So c4. So now, what black can do here simply is we could play bishop e7, follow with castling.
Right, and white could continue with...
Right. Or the black could play knight to c6, which is also playable.
Right.
But what Biscard did was move this pawn that he had moved to d6. Now he moves it again and moves it to d5.
Right.
All right, so now what does Evans do?
Well, he could take the pawn, but that gives black a chance to develop a number of pieces. He's going to develop his knight on b1 to c3, another attack on the pawn, also attacking the knight.
Right. All right, so here's where Biscard, the reason he moved the pawn to d5, he opens up now the diagonal for this dark squared bishop to come into play, and he plays the bishop to c5.
Right, and he's threatening the f2 pawn. He's threatening to fork. He could either check it with the bishop, or he could fork it, forking the queen and the rook. But there's a simple antidote to that.
Right.
Evans has kind of a comment about it, and Evans simply blocks it with pawn to d4.
Now, may I read Evans'
what Evans
comment?
Says about that?
Evans annotated this game in one of his books called Modern Chess Brilliancy, and he said after Biscard played bishop c5, he says, here black is seized by a severe attack of daydreaming.
Right.
This is actually not a good move at all,
right,
because it's losing a tempo, first of all. It's forcing the bishop to move again.
Right.
What Biscard did, he plays bishop b4, and now he has a double attack on the knight.
Right, he has a
okay, so now what does Evans do on his...
He could, what's been played in this position is to play this bishop on c1 to d2.
You know
that relieves the pin Keres, the Estonian
Grandmaster Paul Keres.
In fact, he recommended that move in this position, but Evans chose what's probably a stronger move. He took the queen on d1 to b3, which earned an exclamation point from another commentator, the former world champion Max Euwe, in his book.
Right. So now the queen now is not only defending the knight on c3, but it's attacking the bishop on b4.
Right. And another attack on the
pawn yes,
here.
we've got all kinds of attacks here. So what Biscard did on his eighth move, he played c5.
Right.
The pawn now defends the bishop on b4.
Right. And so Evans follows by another attack on the knight also clearing the way to be able to castle later.
All right.
So they're piling up in the center.
Yes, they are. Exactly. Well, here's what Biscar does. On his ninth move, he plays Queen A. Instead of castling, well, he plays Queen A5. Now he's got a triple attack on that knight.
Right. So the knight is pinned. He's got 3 attacking. There are only 2 defenders. So really, this pawn is lost. Evans chooses to relieve the pin by castling. He's still going to lose a pawn at this point, but his king is safe, safe at least for the time being from any further attack. He's castled. He's ready to open up his rooks.
Okay.
So.
All right, so here's where Biscar continues on his 10th move. Knight takes c3.
Right.
He captures the knight on c3.
Yeah. White is forced to capture with the pawn.
B takes
c3.
Yeah, B takes c3. And Biscar continues with bishop takes the pawn on c3.
Right.
Bishop takes c3, attacking the rook on a1.
He attacks the rook. Now, Evans has a choice. If he moves the rook away from the attack, it really allows black to cement the position either by playing the c pawn, take d pawn. And
it would.
That causes a lot of problems for black. It really locks black into the center of the board. Very aggressive play. So he doesn't really want to do that. The only other alternative is to take the bishop on c1 and kind of interpose that between the rook and the bishop, attacking that bishop.
All right. So now with that bishop under attack, Biscar captures on B. His bishop now takes the bishop on
Retreating
B.
would serve no
Yeah,
purpose.
right, exactly. He doesn't do it also. He takes. Bishop takes B2. Now he's attacking the rook.
Right, he's attacking the rook. Now, when we were talking earlier, I mean, probably any number of amateurs would, just as an automatic reaction, recapture that bishop with the queen.
An amateur player,
without really thinking
certainly
it through.
a beginner
Right.
would just recapture the bishop with the
keep
queen.
material roughly even. He's down.
But
He's even up a pawn.
Exactly. But what would an experienced player like Larry Evans do?
What he does is he takes the rook on a8, the one that's under attack, moves it to e1 with check.
Yeah, this is the move I like.
Right.
This is actually a move which is known in chess circles as a Zwischenzug.
Right.
A Zwischenzug is a German term which is known throughout the chess world. It's an in-between move, an intermediate move. It's a move you don't expect, but you throw it in between the move you're going to play.
Right.
Now, on this check, rook ae1 check, Biscar cannot block that check with the bishop. Why not? Why cannot this bishop go to e6?
When the bishop blocks it, it's pinned. It cannot move.
Pinned, right.
White can simply play pawn take the c pawn, take the d pawn. That bishop is lost.
He's going to lose. He's going to lose that bishop, right?
So now both pieces are under attack. He's going to lose one of them.
Okay. So on this check, rook ae1 check, the king has to move, and the king is certainly not going to move over to d8 and stay in the center.
In the wide open center.
Wide open center. So the king moves to f8. All right, so that's his move.
So
all right, king f8.
Now, and of course, forfeits castling. So now he's got locked that bishop into that rook rather into the corner.
Right.
So now finally white recaptures, queen take on b2.
All right. All right, so materially it's even, well, actually, no, black's a pawn ahead.
Black is a pawn ahead.
But he's suffering because of being...
Well, let's look at the position. The two rooks are still in the corner. The knight and the bishop haven't been...
All these undeveloped pieces.
The king is stuck. He can't castle anymore.
Exactly.
Now white has 2 rooks in the center part of the board. His king is safely castled. The knight and the bishop are developed. The queen's in a good aggressive diagonal. The position is overwhelming.
Yes, white has a superior positional advantage here. All right, so Biscar now on his 14th move plays the c pawn. C takes d4. He takes here. C takes d4.
Now, white could capture the d4 pawn with his queen or his knight. That, in a way that makes sense. It centralizes both pieces. But he wants to capture the pawn on play c take d5. It prevents that bishop from developing to the e6 square.
Yes, it controls the e6 square, and it also stops the knight from developing the c6. Knight c6.
So he's keeping it. A player wants to keep, when a player who has an advantage in development, he wants to keep his opponent who's behind in development, he wants to keep him restricted as long as possible. He doesn't want to give him an opportunity to develop.
So this pawn on d5 is a thorn in black's side here.
Right.
All right. So this guy now has to get his pieces developed here. So this knight on b8, he now brings into play by playing the d7. Knight d7 is his move.
We should also note that queen can't take that pawn because it leads to mate.
Exactly. You mean if he had? You mean if he had
if the
taken?
queen could take that pawn.
Right. If the queen had taken the pawn, okay.
Right. Then white simply plays queen to bishop 5 check.
Oh, and the king has to
has
move
to go over,
here,
and then-
the rook down to
Right.
E8 is checkmate.
Mate.
All right.
So that's why he can't take that
So
pawn.
that's a poison pawn.
Right.
Okay. So let's put that pawn back. The king on F8.
Sorry, and the knight went to D7.
All right. So the knight went to D. Okay. So the knight goes to D7. So what does little Larry Evans do now?
Well, now he takes the pawn on D4. Queen take D4.
All right. All right. So now Biscayr plays the knight to F6, and now is attacking this pawn on D5
Right.
twice.
Right, he's attacking that pawn.
Okay.
Well, he can't, Evans could choose to defend it,
Right.
but he comes up with something even better, and that is another checkmating threat. He plays the queen to E5, now threatening to play queen to E7 check, again forcing the king over.
All right. So let's see the position that we have in front of us. If he's threatening queen E7, forcing the king over, then white would just continue with a
queen to E.
So it's a sacrifice.
Right.
He sacrifices queen with queen E8.
Right.
The knight has to recapture,
and then finally the rook comes down,
and
that's
checkmate.
Right.
All right. So that is the threat that white has
Right.
by playing the queen to E5. The threat is the check on E7. All right. So what Biscayr does here on his 17th move is play queen C5 and protects that
square.
That very crucial square E7. All right. So what does Larry Evans do now?
Well, he's going to. I'm going to replace that.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
He's going to increase the pressure. He's going to take the knight on F3, play to G5. Now he's threatening to play knight take the pawn on H7. If black takes with the knight, it renews the backbreaking threat with E8. He can't move that knight.
So he can't. Okay.
And if he takes with the rook, he loses the exchange because the bishop will simply take.
All right. All right. So what Biscayr does here, he plays bishop D7.
Right.
So now
now he's protecting that.
Now he's
square,
protecting that very.
and he's
opening up now for this rook to come into play.
But
all right. So
now he brings the knight on G5 back to E4, threatening both the queen and the other knight.
Okay. Now, let's show our viewers why this queen on C5 cannot take this pawn on D5. It's attacked twice. So if we take this queen here, the queen takes the pawn on D5, white simply could take this knight here, take away the defender, like that. Right. And if the queen now takes the queen, white just continues with knight takes here, check, the king moves over, and the knight takes the queen, and is now 2 pieces up.
2 pieces up.
2 pieces up. So that's why that pawn is still poisoned. This pawn right here. This queen is on here, bishop's here, and this knight. Okay, so the knight comes here. Oh, that's right, we had taken this off, right. All right, here's the position. Okay, so now this is going to force Biscayr to take the knight. Knight takes E4.
Right, knight
takes E4. And
now he captures with the rook.
Takes with the rook.
Takes E4, because he wants to maintain that, though. He wants to
exactly. He controls that.
Right.
So, but now Biscayr finally gets this rook on A8 into play by playing rook E8, attacks the queen.
So he's got to get the queen out of the... Evans has to get the queen out of the way, so he just moves it next to the rook. Queen to F4. Facing, it's on the same file as the king now.
All right. All right, so Biscayr says, well, now I've got this rook defended with the bishop. Now, why? He says, I can take the pawn now. Right. So he plays queen takes D5.
Right.
Now he's a pawn ahead.
Now he's a pawn ahead. He's threatening.
But his position.
He's also threatening. But this. He's threatening the. He's threatening the bishop, but he cannot take it. Well, if he takes the bishop.
Well, okay, but it's the white's move though. He's threatening. Okay, so the queen is threatening this bishop.
Right.
Okay, but white can ignore that. Doesn't have to defend that bishop or retreat the bishop.
What he does is he doubles up his rooks. He takes the rook that's back here on F1 and puts it behind the other rook. Puts it onto E1.
Okay. But let's show our viewers why black cannot take this bishop, which is undefended.
Okay.
Let's say queen takes the bishop on D3, wins the bishop.
Okay, so then
how do we continue?
White plays rook on E8.
Check.
Check.
He's forced to take, bishop takes E8. Okay,
right.
But here's the move.
Brings the queen over to here.
Queen
to
B4. Check.
Check.
There's only one way to block here.
Right, and then he comes down, takes the bishop with mate.
There's checkmate.
Again, it's that same theme.
Same theme. Okay, so let's go back then. All right, so where's all this here? This is doubled. Okay. This queen, see, I had to realize where the stuff was here. Where do we have this? Oh, the pawn, right. This was okay, this was here. This is the position. Okay. So what white does is double the rooks on the e file. This bishop is poisoned. So what Biskar does after rook AE1 or FE1 after Evans, well, he just takes rook takes e4.
Right.
That's his move. Rook takes e4. Yep.
And then he takes with the bishop, threatening the queen, attacking the queen. The queen's got to go somewhere.
All right. So now the bishop has to retreat. Well, what Biskar does, he comes queen e6.
And he mounts a threat of his own. If white were to move that bishop thinking, so let's grab that pawn, then that pawn is poisoned because it would be queen take rook.
Let's show that. Let's show our viewers what happens.
If white were to do that.
If white were greedy and going after this pawn, he's going to get mated.
Right.
Queen takes e1 is checkmate.
So
all right, so that pawn is taboo. All right, so with this queen on e6, we have the pin. The bishop is pinned. It cannot move. And so what does Evans do now here?
Evans plays the queen down to b8 check.
Okay, now the check. Oh, so now, and again, if he moves the king up to e7, if he moved it up here, this queen would win the rook.
Right.
He would lose a major piece.
Right.
Yeah. All right, so that's not good. So what he does
is he blocks.
He blocks with the bishop.
Right.
He plays bishop e, blocks with the bishop, still maintaining this pin on this bishop.
Right.
And isn't he threatening something like f5?
Right, that would win the bishop.
Yes, and then he's threatening to win the bishop. Yeah. So what does Larry Evans do now? It's his. It's 25th move coming up.
Right. He takes the pawn on a7, queen take a7.
All right. Okay, now this pawn is under attack.
Right.
Okay, so what Biskar does, he plays b5.
Right.
And avoids having that pawn taken by the queen.
Right.
All right, so what does Evans do now?
Now he takes the queen. He's finds a check on queen to a3, check again on the king.
All right, well, now, why cannot this king move away to g8? Why is that a big mistake?
Because he could play bishop take the h pawn on h7 check and winning the queen with the rook.
All right, so bishop takes h7 check.
Loses the queen.
He's going to lose the queen to the rook.
Right.
And this queen against the rook and the bishop is going to win. This queen will win.
Yeah,
yes,
it's a one-end game.
So it's a one-end game. Okay. So in this position, what he does, he blocks. So on this queen a3 check, he just comes with queen e7 and blocks the check.
And attacks the queen, essentially.
Exactly, right.
So what Evans does is he plays bishop to c6, attacking the e8 bishop, and that's the end of the game.
This guy resigned.
The guy resigns.
Well, he resigned because he cannot take the queen.
Can't take the queen because rook take bishop.
Right.
Checkmate.
All right, so that's why
and the queen can't take the rook
well,
because
right,
it's pinned.
That's right. In this position, the queen cannot take the rook because the queen is pinned.
Right.
All right. So this is interesting that the game is over. Yeah, he resigned. Okay. So chess fans, this was a game from the 1958-59 U.S. Championship. Larry Evans, again, he played in several U.S. championships. He won it 5 times. This is one from 1958-59, and I hope that you all enjoyed this game that Barty and I presented to you. Stay tuned. Next time, we're going to present you another interesting and instructive game that's going to hopefully help your game of chess, which is an exciting game. Millions of people around the world play this game, and I hope you do too. See you next time.